Welcome back to the C-Suite. I'm Danielle Jaworski. In this segment, if you are a CEO or a key executive at your organization and you're looking for a peer group that you can really connect with, to grow from, and learn from, this is going to be a segment for you because there is a new peer group for CEOs and executives that is happening in Waterloo Region. Here to talk more about that peer group is Crystal Lee Olson. She is a career leadership development expert, and she's going to be talking about leadership and peer groups for CEOs and key executives. Welcome, Crystal Lee, to the show.
Thank you, Danielle. It's great to be here with you today.
We know a lot about benefits when it comes to having peer groups and connections and having that kind of support. We hear a lot about it at the professional level. However, CEOs and key executives, they have different needs and wants when it comes to peer group. Can you explain a little bit more about what those differences are?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you that there are a lot of different peer groups out there and available, and I've participated in them myself at the chamber levels and other independent organizations that have thrown together these peer groups that are really helpful if you're at different levels. But when you come to a CEO or executive level, there's kind of this sense of feeling of it's lonely at the top. And it's not that, they're loners. They are surrounded by other colleagues that are at their level, but there's a certain level of support that is really special when it comes to a CEO and a key executive, where they're handling just the next level of strategy, of development, of challenges that are going on with the organization, that sometimes you can get some support inside the organization. But again, we all have blind spots. So this is where the peer group really adds as a benefit to kind of almost have this like exclusive advisory board, if you will, that you can go to and bring some of the challenges, but also create that sense of community and support outside of your organization, because we know that a lot of people are talking about life work balance. And I think that had a lot to do with what people have been observing, this great resignation, right? Of feeling really isolated as key executives and CEOs and really needing that sense of community beyond their organization and having access to that collective intelligence and support that exists outside of that organization.
Well, you mentioned that really sometimes to be a CEO or a key executive, it's lonely at the top. And
Mhm.
I'm also thinking the fact a lot of times that, at that level, a lot of times there's information that you necessarily can't share with your leadership team at that point in time. But you also sometimes want to brainstorm. And who do you do that if you don't have a very selective, very kind of a key group who understands that challenge, but can also help you?
Absolutely, right? You're so right, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Is that each executive is initiating different strategies and initiatives within that organization where their colleagues may not be the best sounding board, and that's where the peer group acts as this advisory board, as I alluded to earlier, where it's a safe place for them to bring forth their challenge, their major decisions that they're wrestling with, and not have someone inside the organization see them go through that process, because there is a lot of integrity that these leaders have as well of, I want to show up polished, professional, and ready to present my ideas. But there's a lot of work that goes before you get to that spot. So it's really great to have that safe space with an advisory board to bring those big decisions or challenges that are going on with your particular sector of the business, or as the CEO, of saying, hey, what do you think about this? And having a variety of expertise and experience around the table that you may not necessarily get when you're inside your organization, where you have more tenured employees that are just really focused in and dialed in on that one industry.
And with the work that you do with executives and leadership development, especially over the last couple of years, have you seen in your work some different needs or gaps that have either had existed and we now know about them, or we've just become more aware of them when it comes to development and support for CEOs and key executives?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually participated in a launch of a new leadership development program on the market this year. And what we did was, instead of going into one organization and doing an in-house program, it was an 8-week leadership development program. And instead of just doing it in-house, we actually had an eclectic group of leaders from all levels, from coast to coast, participate. And what was really interesting was seeing the leaders connect all across the country. And no matter the level, the value of that connection and the learning opportunities from each other because of the breadth of experience, the different stories that are shared, right? You know, as a leadership development professional and facilitator, you can share all kinds of practical tools. But if there's a story or some sort of emotion that can be evoked, and that typically comes from other participants, that's where the magic really starts to happen. And this different way of learning of I went into this experience with an open mind and I came out with so much more, right? And I see that as a trend in the peer groups as well.
And a lot of times, I think when you think of CEOs, you see it's the face of the organization. And for most employees, they may not necessarily have a daily connection with their CEO or see them on a day to day or have conversations with them day to day. So
Mhm.
they really are the face of the organization. It's interesting to just become more aware that there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. So that what you do see, there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The CEOs are responsible for the vision, for communicating the vision, and ensuring that that gets cascaded down the organization. So you're right. As much as they are the face of the organization, there are certain levels within certain organizations that feel that that figurehead is a little bit of a, mysterious creature.
And have you seen through your work, especially again over the last couple of years, any particular challenges that CEOs and key executives have been facing that the peer group would really help to solve or support?
Yeah, the biggest challenge has been that even prior to COVID, there's been, this common factor of fast-paced environment, right? And fast changes. Well, if that speed has just increased exponentially, and this idea of needing to pivot, I know that a lot of people are kind of sensitive to that word now of I don't want to pivot anymore. But the reality is that businesses have always been exposed to that. They're just experiencing at a much more rapid rate, and they're really getting clear on what can I control and what I can't control. And I think that's a bit of a different tune than what they're accustomed to.
Mm. When you talk about change, there's a lot of change management that has to happen in organizations, especially recently. But at the end of the day, a lot of times they say, the comment is change has to start at the top. And so, how are you seeing leaders change differently or manage change management differently?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of the priority has now become not I'm in charge of the change, but I'm kind of just steering the boat, and my and leaders are starting to recognize that they really need to get the team on board with the change. I actually was just chatting with a business partner of mine and saying, there are 6 key questions that you can ask to help put a team change in perspective. And so you ask these 6 questions just to kind of get those team members on board instead of doing it in more of a way of here's the new direction, so everyone get on board. It's more of an inclusive approach. And I think that's really what a lot of leaders are trying to figure out and how to embrace that.
And you said inclusive. I was also thinking a much more collaborative approach as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal Lee, for being here today talking about this new executive forum that's going to be happening in Waterloo Region to really support the specific needs of CEOs and key executives as a peer group. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It was really a great time.